Charlie slowed her car. With half the cops and a hurricane raging in the area, now was not the time to be stopped for speeding. She was gripping with dirt from the dead woman's backyard and had a nagging feeling there was something she was forgetting about. John, she realized, she was supposed to meet him. She checked the clock on the dashboard almost 2 hours ago. Her heart sank. He'll think I stood him up. No, he'll think I'm dead, she amended. Given the hilarious history of their relationship, he probably think the second was more likely. When she got to the restaurant, they had planned to meet a small Italian place across town. Charlie ran in front of the parking lot at full speed. She's scared to stop in front of the teenage hostess, who greeted her with a flustered look. Can I help you? She asked Charlie, taking a step back. Charlie caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror behind the hostess counter. There were streaks of dirt on her face and clothes. She hadn't thought to clean up first. She quickly wiped her cheeks with her hands before answering the girl. I'm supposed to be meeting someone. A tall guy, brown hair. It's kind of. She gestured vaguely at the top of her head, attempting to indicate the habitual chaos of John's hair. But the hostess looked at her blankly. Charlie bit her lip in frustration. He must have left. Of course he left. You're 2 hours late. Charlie, a voice rang out. John. You're still here? She cried. She allowed for the quiet restaurant as he appeared behind the hostess, looking profoundly relieved. I figured I might as well eat while I'm here. He swallowed what was in his mouth and laughed. Are you okay? I thought you might not be coming. I figured I might as well eat while I'm here. No, sorry. I'm fine. Where were you sitting? Or are you still sitting? Well, I mean, you're obviously not sitting, you're standing, but I mean, before you were standing, where were you sitting? John ran her fingers into her hair and clenched her fists against her scalp, trying to reassemble her thoughts. She mumbled an apology to the room, not sure who it was for. John glanced around nervously, then gestured toward a table near the kitchen. There was mostly empty plates with a half-eaten breadstick resting on it, a cup of coffee, and a second place sitting, untouched. They sat down and they looked at her appraisingly. Then John leaned across the table and asked in a low voice, Charlie, what happened? You wouldn't believe me if I told you, she said lightly. His face remained concerned. You're filthy. Did you fall down in the parking lot? Yes, Charlie said. I fell in the parking lot and rolled down a hill and into a dumpster, then fell out of the dumpster and tripped on the way in. Happy? Stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like you had the right to disapprove of me. John pulled back in his chair, his eyes widened, his blink hard, and Charlie sighed. John, I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything. I just need some time. Some time to collect my thoughts and to clean up. She laughed, an exhausted, shaken sound, then buried her face in her hands. John leaned back and signaled for the waitress to bring the check. Breathing heavily, Charlie looked around the restaurant. It was almost empty. The hostess and the only other waitress were talking to each other near the door, with no apparent interest in anything their customers were doing. There was a family of four by the front window, the children just barely out of toddlerhood. One kept sliding out of his chair and onto the floor every time his mother turned her attention away. The other, a girl, was happily drawing on the tablecloth with markers. No one seemed to care what was going on, but the emptiness made Charlie feel exposed. I'm going to go clean up, she said. Bathroom? John pointed. Charlie got up and left the table just as the waitress arrived to deliver his ticket. There was a payphone in the hallway, and Charlie stopped at it, wavering. She craned her neck to see if John was watching, but from where she stood, she could only see a tiny corner of their table. Quickly, she called Clayburgh's office. Excuse me. To her surprise, he answered. You saw her backyard, he said. It was a question. Can you give me the other addresses? Charlie asked. There could be a pattern, something. There sure could, he said drearily. That's why I raced back to the station instead of sticking around to measure the holes. You have a pen? Hang on. The hostess was briefly absent from her station, and Charlie dropped the phone, letting it swing on its metal cord as she hurried to the podium and snatched a pen and took out a menu. She rushed back. Clay, go ahead. He recited names and addresses, and she scribbled them drearily in the measurements of the menu. Thanks, she said. When he was done and hung up without waiting for him to respond, she folded the menu and slipped it into her pocket. In the bathroom, Charlie washed off as much of the dirt as she could. She couldn't clean her clothing, but at least her face was scrubbed, and her hair was rearranged a little more neatly. As she moved to exit the bathroom, an image flashed unbidden through her thoughts. It was the face of the dead woman. She could be your twin, she heard Clay said, in his low, authoritative voice. Charlie shook her head. It's a coincidence. He's right. How many brown-haired college-age women are there around here? The first victim was a man. That doesn't mean anything. She grabbed the doorknob to leave, but froze. It was just like in the library. Charlie released the knob and it spun slowly back into position, releasing a horrible creak as it moved. The costumes had been disturbed, and the creaking noise was so faint and careful she scarcely even heard it. Charlie looked up from her game. There was a figure in the door. Charlie glanced wildly through the room, pulling herself back to the present. With a swell of panic, Charlie pulled on the bathroom door, but it had somehow sealed shut. She mouthed words, but no sound came out. I know you're there. I'm trying to get to you. I have to get inside, she screamed. The door burst open and Charlie fell into John's arms. Charlie! She collapsed to her knees. Charlie looked up to see the scattered handful of customers all staring at her. John glanced into the bathroom behind her. Then, quickly, turned his attention back to Charlie, helping her back to her feet. I'm okay. I'm fine. She took loose of his hands. I'm fine. The door was stuck. I felt hot. Charlie fanned at her face, trying to make a sensible story out of it. Come on, let's get to the car. He tried to take her arm again, but she shook free. I'm fine. She took her keys out of her pocket and walked straight for the door, but not wait for him. An old woman was openly staring at Charlie, her fork suspended in the air. Charlie returned her stare. Food poisoning, Charlie said plainly. The woman's face went pale and Charlie walked out the door. When they got out to her car, John sat down in the passenger seat and looked at Charlie expectantly. You sure you're okay? It's been a rough day, that's all. I'm sorry. What happened? Tell him what happened, Charlie thought. I want to go to my old house, she said instead, surprising herself. Be honest, her inner voice said harshly. You know what kind of creature is doing this, and you know who built it. Stay focused. Right, he said, his voice softening. You haven't seen you haven't seen it since the storm. She nodded. He thinks I wanted to see the damage. She'd forgotten about the storm until now. But she said the sudden kindness of John's voice made her nervous. Is there anything left? She imagined the house raised to the ground and felt a sudden wrongness, like a part of her had been ripped away. She never thought of the house as anything but a house, but now, as she drove toward what was left of it, she felt a painful knot in her stomach. It was where all her clearest memories of her father were kept. His rough hands building her toys, showing her his new creations at his workshop, and holding her close when she was afraid. They lived there together, just the two of them, and it was the place where he had finally died. Charlie felt as if the joy, the sorrow, the love, and the anguish of their two lifetimes had poured into the very bones of the old house. The idea of being wrecked by a storm was an utter violation. She shook her head and gripped the wheel tighter. Suddenly aware of how angry she was, her love of the house, even of her father, could never be simple. They had both betrayed her, but now there is a new monster out there. She clenched her jaw, trying to fight the tears that welled up in her eyes. Dad, what did you do? As soon as they're out of the town center, Charlie sped up. Clay could be tied up dealing with the newest victim for a while, but eventually he could think to come to her father's house as well. She could only hope she connected the dots first. You're on the same side. Charlie put a hand to her head and rubbed her temple. The impulse to guard her father's reputation from what was coming was visceral, but it was also nonsensical. Less than a mile from the house, they passed a construction site. It was set back too far from the road for Charlie to see what it was, though it looked abandoned at the moment. I did a little work over here when I first got here, John said. Some huge demolition project. He laughed. You have some weird stuff out here. You wouldn't want to look, you wouldn't know by looking at it anyway. He studied the countryside for a moment. Isn't that the truth? Charlie said, not sure if there was something else she was supposed to say. She was still trying to calm herself. Finally, they came to her driveway. She pulled in with her eyes on the gravel. The house only a dark smudge in her peripheral vision. The last time Charlie had been there, she ran in and out without pausing to look at anything. All she wanted was Theodore, and she had grabbed him and gone. Now she regretted her haste, wishing for some final mental image. You're not here to say goodbye. She turned the car off, steeled herself, and looked up. The house was surrounded by trees, and at least three of them had fallen, striking the roof directly. One had landed squarely in the front corner, crushing the walls beneath its weight. Charlie could see through the broken beams and crumbled drywall into the living room. There was only debris. The front door was attacked, though the steps to it were splintered and split. They looked as if they give away as soon as they bore weight. Charlie got out of the car and headed toward them. What are you doing? John's voice was alarmed. Charlotte ignored him. She heard his door slam and she caught her arm wrenching her back. What? She snapped. Charlie, look at this place. That house is going to fall over any day now. It's not going to fall, she said flatly, but she did gaze up again. The house seemed to be listening to the side, though it must have been an illusion. Surely the foundation itself wouldn't have sunk. I'll be out before I get killed. I promised, she said more gently, and he nodded. Go slow, he said. They carefully climbed the steps to the porch, staying close to the sides, but the wood was sturdier than it looked. They could have taken 3 steps to the right and walked through the open wall, but Charlie took out her key and unlocked the door as John waited patiently, letting her go through the unnecessary ritual.